In Venezuela, the fourth cycle of peace talks between the Colombian government and the National Liberation Army is underway. In the U.S., anger grew amongst Hawaii residents as the outcry, the lack of warning, and action facing the wildfires that devastated the island of Maui. The leader of Niger's ruling National Council for the Safeguarding of the Homeland, General Omar Tchiani, gave the green light to start of talks with the Economic Community of West African States. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news, and we do so in Venezuela. On Monday, the fourth round of talks between the National Liberation Army and the Colombian government got underway in Caracas. Both delegations will review the bilateral ceasefire that came into effect on August 3rd, the longest ceasefire agreed with this insurgent group. Both sides will highlight the progress made so far, especially regarding the ceasefire and the setup of the National Participation Committee. In that regard, the delegations have emphasized that both the initial truce started in June and the ceasefire, including the implementation of its monitoring and verification mechanisms, have led to this resumption of the dialogue.
We think that if we expect that what we signed here be implemented, that in itself proves that there is a commitment to achieve a political resolution to the conflict. This roundtable, since it started here in Caracas last October and continued in November, has been signing a series of agreements under the logic that what is agreed upon and signed be implemented.
The head of the Peace National Liberation Army delegation, Pablo Bertrand, spoke about the progress made in the peace talks and the goodwill of its organizers.
About to implement a bilateral ceasefire to be enforced until next February. It has a very robust monitoring and verification system, led by the United Nations and the Colombian Church, and we hope that with the good will to comply, and this verification mechanism, incidents will be foreseen and those that may occur be resolved, so that come February, Colombia may not be disappointed about this ceasefire agreement.
Pablo Beltran also called on Colombian society to contribute to this peace process through the National Participation Committee.
The other aspect that for us is even more important is the community participation of society. The government and the National Liberation Army are but a small group to undertake the changes that must be made in Colombia. We say that great changes call for great forces, so we ask Colombian society to take part in this process. For that, we have installed in Bogotá a National Participation Committee with about 100 members, most of them representative of many sectors of Colombian society and of the territories. And we hope that this committee devises an inclusive methodology that does not alienate anyone from taking part in this process.
The head of the Colombian government's peace delegation, Oti Patiño, announced the start of the fourth round of talks and assured that peace with the National Liberation Army will contribute to the construction of a democratic state.
We are beginning a new cycle of talks. The first was right here in Venezuela, and in it we consolidate the principle that peace is an issue that transcends armed organizations and governments. It is a matter for the state and involves the institution and society in general. From this perspective, the peace that we are making with the National Liberation Army, the last rebel political organization of those that emerged in the revolutionary hurricane of the 1960s, must contribute to the construction of a state with full democracy.
During the inauguration of the fourth cycle of peace talks between delegations of the National Liberation Army and the government of Colombia, Executive Vice President Delcy Rodriguez stressed that Venezuela relentlessly supports the total peace policies of the government of Gustavo Petro.
Well, we want to highlight in this fourth cycle, and I have heard it from both sides, that it's very important to adopt humanitarian relief measures for the communities that have been impacted by this armed conflict. I believe that it becomes a humanitarian objective, an objective that cannot be postponed, in an urgent objective that must be addressed to impact and reduce the effects of the armed conflict, especially in the communities that have seen their right to develop really affected as a result of the conflict. Venezuela, as a guarantor country, support all of its possibilities without rest, the total peace policies of President Gustavo Petro, and the government of President Gustavo Petro, that it can lead us to the right path for a lasting peace, a peace that really feels the people as their own, and that can keep away his path from the enemies of peace.
In Ecuador, the president of the National Electoral Council, Diana Atamain, stated that the candidacy of assassinated presidential candidate Fernando Villavicencio will be assumed by other candidates, as the electoral power must comply with the law.
Must be complied with. The law gives the possibility to the current electoral authority. We are not qualified entity to resolve concerns or to interpret the law. The law is very clear. Now they have complied with what corresponds to the deceased candidate, in this case, who was violently assassinated, and we strongly reject that. He's going to be replaced by a new one, and regardless of the possible interpretations that could be given and that were given in social networks, the authority complies with what's been determined by the law.
Likewise, the president of the electoral power of Ecuador, Diana Atamain, explained that government authorities are working to ensure that the elections take place in a safe condition.
Currently working with the armed forces, and I have already requested to the President of the Republic to authorize the armed forces and the Minister of Interior and the police to discuss and arrange with the Minister of Education so the armed forces are not only present 24 hours before the elections, which is Saturday. If necessary, starting on Wednesday, the electoral presence must be guarded by the armed forces and the national police. And I have already formally asked the President of the Republic, who is the one who can arrange that, to guarantee that on election day, people can go there peacefully and safely.
In Guatemala, preparations advance for the second round of the elections next August 20th. On Sunday, the Superior Electoral Tribunal started the delivery of ballots in the 4 districts of the country. The entity pointed out that it expects the process to be completed on August 19th. In the polling centers close to the Guatemalan capital, more than 19.4 million ballots were printed for 25.5 thousand polling stations. In this second round of elections, Bernardo Arevalo of the leftist movement Semilla and the militant of the National Unity of Hope Party, Sandra Torres, will dispute the presidency of the Central American country. Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. Other stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back from the South. In the U.S., anger grew amongst Hawaii residents as they outcry the lack of warning and action facing the wildfires that devastated the island of Maui. Officials have confirmed 96 deaths so far, but the figure is likely to rise as search and rescue tasks continue in Lahaina. Questions are being asked about how prepared authorities were for the catastrophe, despite the island's exposure to natural hazards. No emergency sirens sounded, and many Lahanian residents spoke of learning about the blaze from neighbors running down the street, and many of them rushed to the ocean seeking shelter from the flames. Also, Maui suffered numerous power outages during the crisis, preventing many residents from receiving emergency alerts on their mobile phones. Wednesday's fire in Maui is the deadliest in the United States since 1918, according to the non-profit research group National Fire Protection Association.
Now, this fire began on the 8th, late on Tuesday, and what the result was this, the destruction of Lahaina. And when I say destruction, having been at ground zero twice, there is very little left there. Now, what does that mean? That means that over 2,700 structures were destroyed in Lahaina, and an estimated value of $5.6 billion has gone away. But mostly there are people are suffering, and we continue to work to find them.
The governor of Hawaii, Josh Green, explained the possible cause of the start of the fire. Let's hear it.
The information we have is that in those hours when the fire sparked, there were several fires across Maui. One fire was deemed to be out, It must not have been completely extinguished because when the winds rose up, winds gusting as high as 81 miles per hour, fire spread rapidly. We believe between 60 miles per hour and 81 miles per hour across that part of the island. And that meant that fire traveled 1 mile every minute, resulting in this tragedy. With those kind of winds and 1,000-degree temperatures, ultimately all the pictures that you will see will be easy to understand, because that level of destruction in a fire hurricane, something new to us in this age of global warming, was the ultimate reason that so many people perished.
Rescuers in the Italian town of Bardonecchia on Monday searched for possible missing persons after heavy rains prompted a landslide and a mountain stream burst its banks violently. Fire spokesman Luca Carri confirmed that rescuers had no report of missing persons but were still searching for houses and cars near the area of the landslide. So far, crews had rescued 6 people overnight from an overturned pickup truck. The town of 3,000 inhabitants is a popular destination in the Italian Alps for winter mountain sports as well as summer mountaineering. Several streams, torrents, and tributaries, including the Frejus, the Medeset, and the Rochemols, flow through it. Italian authorities reported on Monday that an eruption of Mount Etna volcano caused major disruption to travelers at one of Sicily's busiest airports. The report added that the operator of Catania Airport canceled at least 45 flights due to the risk posed by the ashfall, and added that aviation activity could be further affected by delays or cancellations if the volcano continues to erupt. The mayor of Catania, Enrico Trantino, banned the use of motorbikes and bicycles for the next 48 hours because several areas are covered by a layer of volcanic ash that can quickly become slippery on the roads and increase the risk of accidents. At 3,324 meters, Etna is the highest active volcano in Europe and has erupted frequently over the last 500,000 years. On Monday, Iraq faces the second consecutive day of a heat wave with temperatures likely to rise higher than 51 degrees Celsius. According to the United Nations, Iraq is one of the 5 countries most exposed to some of the severe effects of the ecological crisis and is currently experiencing its 4th consecutive year of drought. Ahmed Al-Jabri, spokesman for the Iraqi Meteorological Agency, said that in the framework of the current heat wave, the thermometer reached 50 degrees Celsius in the capital Baghdad on Sunday and warned that this record could be exceeded on Monday. In this sense, reports indicate that the highest temperatures will be seen in the south, in the regions of Samawa, Nasiriyah, Dimawini, and Najaf. High temperatures affecting Iraq are forecast to extend until the end of September. On Monday in Moscow, the 2023 International Military Technical Forum got underway. The aim of this fair is to showcase Russian defense systems' technical efficiency upgrades and improvements, and to foster innovations across the Russian industrial complex. In his opening remarks, Russian President Vladimir Putin said that Moscow is ready to work with those who defend an independent development option and their respective national interests, while calling on nations to build an indivisible security system. This event, which had its first edition in 2015, is a large-scale exhibition of the latest developments in military equipment, where future projects are unveiled and they exhibit equipment newly built or recently introduced into service by the Russian military. Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu attended the Army 2023 Forum at a military park 60 kilometers west of Moscow alongside the Defense Minister of Belarus. During the tour within the exhibition area, Shoigu observed the military equipment displayed by the delegations of Iran, China, and India. The Russian Defense Minister thanked the participation of more than 70 nations in the event and praised the country's military industry, saying it has adapted to working under sanctions and has increased its production. Chinese Defense Minister General Li Shangfu began a trip to Russia and Belarus on Monday as Beijing and Moscow continue to strengthen their military ties despite pressure from the West. Li will attend the Moscow Conference on International Security and will also travel to Belarus during the 6-day trip, according to Defense Ministry spokesman Colonel Wu Qian. He said Lee will give a speech at the Moscow conference and meet the Russian and other countries' defense chiefs. According to Wu, during his visit to Belarus, he will meet and hold talks with Belarusian state and military leaders and visit Belarusian military units. We have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to visit our YouTube channel at teleSUR English, there you'll be able to rewatch our interviews, top stories, special broadcastings, and more. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Final short break, don't go away. Welcome back from the south. On Monday in Belgium, pilots of the airline Ryanair started a two-day strike to demand a return to pre-pandemic wages. Dozens of pilots at Charleroi Airport joined a work strike for the third time this summer amid ongoing pay disputes to demand a return to their pre-COVID epidemic pay conditions. In the epidemic context, Ryanair employees accepted pay cuts as part of efforts to limit job losses. The unions are also protesting against the unilateral reduction of pilots' rest days and allege that the Irish low-cost carrier has breached Belgian labor law. The work stoppage will cause disruptions to passenger flights and is estimated to cancel more than 40 flights each day, representing around 25% of the airline schedule in Belgium. On Monday, the Iranian Interior Ministry condemned the silence of countries claiming to defend human rights in the face of the attack in Shiraz, saying it encourages terrorism. After arriving in the southwestern city of Shiraz to address the terrorist attack, Ahmed Bahiri said that the tragic incident was planned by sworn enemies of Iran. He also noted that the holy site also suffered another terrorist attack last year that left 13 dead and wounded dozens more. The official denounced that all international organizations and countries claiming to defend human rights remained silent in the face of that incident, making them complicitors of terrorism. The country's president, Sayed Ibrahim Raisi, condemned Sunday's terrorist attack claimed by Daesh at the Shah Cheragh shrine. Raisi ordered an immediate investigation into the incident to identify those responsible and prosecute them. So far, at least 10 people have been detained by security forces in Far province, of which Shiraz is the capital, and on suspicion of involvement in the bloody attack. And a spokesperson for Iran's foreign ministry said on Monday that a judicial process for releasing Iranian U.S. prisoners has been completed and the swap will take place within a mutually agreed framework. According to Iran officials, the government has moved 5 Iranian U.S. from prisons to house arrest in exchange for billions of dollars frozen in South Korea, U.S. as part of a tentative deal that follows months of heightened tensions between the two countries. Iranian officials at the United Nations told the Associated Press that the prisoner transfer marked a significant initial step in the implementation of the agreement, which is still being negotiated and could eventually lead to the full release of the U.S. citizens. The final transfer of the money and the release of the 5 detainees is expected in the next month.
The government of the Islamic Republic of Iran has received necessary guarantee for the fulfillment of the commitments by the American side, and so the process will go ahead within the agreed framework. The judicial procedure for the prisoners sought by the other party has been completed, and the swap will be done within the framework of the agreement and through a judicial process.
The leader of Niger's ruling National Council for the Safeguarding of the Homeland, General Omar Tchiani, on Monday gave the green light to the start of talks with the Economic Community of West African States. Tchiani's statement came during a meeting with a delegation of religious leaders from Nigeria. Tchiani said that Niger's new leadership is optimistic about the start of dialogue with representatives of the 15 West African countries regional bloc. On July 28th, it was announced that General Omar Tchiani, a former commander of the Presidential Guard, was taken over as head of the National Council for the Safeguarding of the Homeland and the functions of transitional president in Niger. Previously, West African leaders evaluated the option of activating a regional standby force to restore the constitutional order in Niger. In a statement on national television, despite agreeing to negotiate with ECOWAS through dialogue, the leader of Niger's ruling National Council for the Safeguarding of the Homeland denounced the illegal, inhumane, and humiliating sanctions imposed by the West African regional bloc.
Authorities of Niger regret this attitude of a certain international community, which consists of showing solidarity with a few politicians of the deposed regime, while at the same time lacking empathy for the people of Niger, who have been hard hit by the illegal, inhuman, and humiliating sanctions imposed by ECOWAS, which go so far as to deprive the country of pharmaceutical products, basic foodstuffs, and electricity supplies.
In an announcement hours after the junta said it was open to talk with ECOWAS, Niger's military soldiers said they will prosecute deposed President Mohamed Bazoum for high treason and undermining state security.
In any case, the Nigerian government has so far gathered necessary evidence to prosecute the deposed president and his local and foreign accomplices before the competent national and international bodies for high treason and undermining Niger's internal and external security following his exchange with nationals, foreign heads of state, and heads of international organizations.
We have come to the end of this news briefing. You can find these and many other stories on our website, telesurenglish.net. Also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For Telesur English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.